Hello, good afternoon everyone. So welcome to Liquid Brain. So today I will attempt to try to show you that how you could be able to use Appscript to actually automate a report generation based on a Google Doc template, something like that, based on, again, another Google Sheet where have the raw data, where individual lines over here will be generated into individual reports in a Google, in two format actually. So the first will be the Google Doc format, something like that, where you're able to edit individual data or do some further modification if you need. Or you can also just look at the PDF folder here, which will also be generated together in Appscript, which you can directly be emailing to the client or just make an archive, such as a report or PO invoice and so on and so forth. Okay, so first of all, what is Appscript? Appscript is basically just a scripting platform developed by Google for lightweight application development in the G Suite platform. So Appscript is basically just how you'll be able to use Java to be able to automate a lot of things inside Google Doc, inside Google Sheets or Google Slides, as well as like Gmail. So you'll be able to send multiple batch email very simply in Appscript as well, as long as you know a little bit of Java here and there. Okay, so what you can use for, like I just said just now, automations of all the productivity suite inside Google, as well as something like a code your own add-on, because I started Google Appscript because I do not want to pay for the mail merge app, and they limit me to about 50 emails a day. So instead, I look into how Appscript can be used and get around the whole add-on situation. You also get to control whatever code base that you develop, so that when things get updated, you know what to fix and you know how to fix it and keep it running, instead of situation where a developer decide to take their app offline or do not maintain it enough and you lost the functionality of it. Okay, so what are we going to do today? So what are we going to do today is basically very simple. It's an extension of what we learned in the previous 8 lesson over here, where we'll import the standard data structure. So in this case, it's the COVID-19 virus statistics. So I actually download this from the European CDC. If you need to see the source raw data, it can be found in the video description down below. We'll be doing some basic calculation in Google Sheets, trying to summarize the data so that it can be more suitable for the report format that we want. And I'm going to generate individual reports for Google Doc and PDF directly for each of the country listed in the database. Okay, so last of all, I'm going to actually insert the table and chart into the Google Doc using Appscript, as well as use Appscript to generate the PDF of the finalized report for each of the country, basically. Okay, so first of all, if you're a programmer, I'm not too sure why you're watching this, but all the code that are written here are written in a way that is easier for a first-timer to look at it and understand. They're not written in the most efficient and clean manner as most of the programmer would want it to be. So in this case, I'm doing procedural programming instead of object-oriented programming. And you are a little bit advanced, you should try to code a little bit more towards the object-oriented space. But for first-timer, for people just starting out programming, procedural programming is much easier for educational and demonstration purpose, basically. Okay, so the code also not optimized for speed. There are a lot of things I can do to actually increase the speed of the execution. But in that case, I might actually make the code harder to read and harder to understand for people without programming platform. So if you spot that, do leave a comment down below. There's a lot of improvement that can be made. And if you do want to contribute to the source code, go ahead. I'll try to support you on that. Okay, so what you need is 3 things. First of all, you need obviously a Google account. You're on Facebook, so I would assume that you would have a Google account. Second thing, you need a Google Sheet file containing the raw data as well as the calculations. You also need a Google document for the report template and a Google folder to put everything in. Okay, so that's basically the Google Sheet. So let's start with the report template first. So I always start with what I want the final outcome to look like. So in this case, I've created this based on the template of Google document, whatever. So you just open Google Doc and choose one of the template. And this is one of the report template that I have actually chosen. So I just rename some of the aspect to, let's say, this is the 19 country case report, and simply put some address data and telephone data. Doesn't really matter. So these are just the wording that will appear in every single report that I generated. And for those that I need the replacement to happen, I will put a double pound sign in front or behind in front and behind of the text. So in this case, the country name will go here exactly, and as well as the date of generations. So instead of just country name and the date of generation, I will also include a few more information, which I think will be, let's say, useful for my client. So maybe I'm sending this to reporters, I'm sending this to people in different countries trying to monitor the situation in their own country, how many cases in the last 14 days, and so on and so forth. So in this case, I will also include a very short text here. In the last 14 days, the confirmed case is country name in the continent, and this is raised to the total number of the case sum. So case sum is the number of cases in the last 40 days combined. So we can do that in Excel, Google Sheets quite easily. Okay, so I also do something like cumulative number, which you can see what is this later. The population is this number, and we can do a percentage over the populations just to show how Google Sheet can be used in such simple calculation as stated over here. Okay, so the last one will be the figure 1 and table 1 will be attached as below. Okay, so I've left the page blank because I'm going to insert them into the document later afterwards. Okay, so let's go to our raw data. So this is the raw data of the CDC COVID-19 case report. So I will link that in the description down below. You can just download the file in Excel and copy paste it directly into the Google spreadsheet over here. So the file size increased by day. So currently it's about 46,000 lines, which I will consider this actually quite a big data that we can actually work with. And Google Sheet can handle this no problem at all. Almost 50,000 lines with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, with almost 12 columns of data. So it's quite a lot of data to be able for you to process. Okay, and of course, some of these are redundant, such as day, month, year. These are redundant. Countries, geolocations, and country territory. A lot of these we're not actually going to use, but just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to paste everything here. But if you do want to actually use this as a proper way of generating a report, you might want to trim the data down a little bit. I believe you can do that in R very easily. And if you do want to know how you can actually connect R and Google Sheet data together, I have a video on that. I'll also link it to the description down below, how you can transfer data online, do some manipulation, and then upload to Google Sheets directly. Okay, so now comes to our example on how we're gonna clean up our data, summarize our data in a way that will fit the report just now. Okay, so first of all, we need to know what are the word that we need to replace. So in this case, we have country name, we have date of generations, which doesn't need to be in the Excel sheet. We also have the case number, cumulative population, and percentage. So these are a few key points that we want to look into. Okay, we also need the data for the last 14 days. So another point to keep track of. Okay, so first of all, what are the unique things that we want to look at? So in this case, if you look at the raw data, we have Afghanistan as the first country, and you can see there's a lot of repeated row on it. Every row represents a single day of data, as well as how many cases and how many deaths and how many, I believe this is the cumulative cases. Yeah, cumulative cases over a certain amount of time and over a certain amount of people. So what we need to do is only extract the unique country, because we want a country to be in a single report. We do not want to have duplicated country because, well, we want to summarize the situation in that country. Okay, that's why the first column is going to be countries, and it will run a unique. So in this case, a unique formula would actually extract out all the unique elements and cancel out the duplicate. So once you run it on sheet 1, G to G, which is here, it will actually give us how many countries do we have here? So 210 different individual countries that are all unique to each other. Okay, those that are not would not show up here. And you kind of have like a Cayman Island, you have Egypt, you have Guam, you have Jordan, and you have Mali, and so on and so forth. So there are many others. Okay, so same thing with continent. Actually, not particularly the same, because each of these countries has a unique continent. But the good way is that one country will not belong in two different continents. So what we could do here, that is actually a much easier way of doing it, which is not like, which is the exact match of which and it might return multi-element. So Afghanistan will only return Asia, which is why we are able to use a VLOOKUP and use B as a source, sheet 1 as the matchup table. So we just look at the country over here and we get a VLOOKUP 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we extract the continent now. Okay, which is why we have VLOOKUP B3B as a source, sheet 1 G2L as the lookup table, and we just do a column 5, so to able to fish out the continent. Okay, and then we put a false because we want the exact match, and with the database not sorted and so on. So we also run a trim command, so it will remove. So trim command actually replaces the white space in front or in the back, so that it actually makes things a lot cleaner. Means there won't have like Africa space, so on and so forth. So it will only result in Africa, and which is a lot easier to do our replacement later. Otherwise, the text will be replaced will be slightly longer and shorter based on the thing that you do. Okay, so we are also running an array formula. So this formula will actually generate from C3 all the way up to C210, which is the brilliant idea because when you delete everything underneath, whoa, what happened? So when we delete everything underneath the equation, it should actually just regenerate that directly because it's an array return. Okay, so similarly to population data, we just take the country, run a VLOOKUP, we get the idea. Similarly to the cumulative number, which also is run through a VLOOKUP directly, so very easily. So the case number will be the overall case number over the last 14 days. Which is why we just do a simple sum and we just add up all the numbers over here. So I'm just going to show you how to get all this number later. Okay, so we get a sum and the percentage of the case number is just case number divided by the total population, which we already calculated in D3 over here. Fairly straightforward in front. So in the back is where things get a little bit more complicated. So what we want to do here is that we want to get the case number for this country, in this case Afghanistan, from 17 September to the 30th September. Okay, so we want to get 14 different days. So how we're going to get it is actually use a filter and we run an if error on it. So if you're not familiar with filter, what does it do is that it will take sheet 1 E to E as the input and will run through a filter where A equals to I2. So in this, I2 is the date, while sheet 1G is equals to B3. So if we go to here, what we're running is that we want to detect if A equals to the date of that day, which is this case, 1917. So actually you can visualize it like that as well. So you just select everything, which is actually quite slow. So if you have 45,000 data, the inbuilt filter function in Googlesheet is not the best way to do it, which is why we are not running it like that. Okay, so yeah, it's not gonna really run. Let me see if I can get it to work. Okay, so the filter function output whatever case number based on the data representation. Yeah, I don't think this is gonna work. Let's not do that. So what they do is that they will only select one day, which is the 17th of September. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, so if you fill out 7th of September, we'll still have a lot of countries. So what we do is that we again select countries only on one single country, in this case Afghanistan. So we only get a single line, which is 17 cases. Okay, so once you've done that, you can see there's 17 cases over here. So similarly, you can just run it through all the different dates and all the different countries. So how you do that is that you log I, which is the top row, log the row number, and in front log the column number, so that when you drag your equation down like that, it will actually just replace everything correctly and it will redirect towards the correct date and the correct country on the right, on the left. Then you don't have to retype the equation over and over and over again over these very, very large sheets of it. Okay, so I also run a conditional formatting just to visualize the highest to lowest number. You can run it by selecting the region that you want to do conditional formatting on. Right click, run a conditional formatting and go for a color scale. Okay, so just choose that and you will highlight all the highest number in green and lowest number in red, or you can reverse it and so on and so forth. Your choice. Okay, now we have identified this. We're basically done all the groundwork that we need. Now is the time where we get out the big guns, which is the Appscript. Okay, so before we go there, just remember that every single line equates to one single report. That's what we want to do. Okay, now we go to Appscript. So if you don't know how to go to Appscript, just go to Tools, click on Script Editor, click on it, and you get to this interface, which is originally like empty. So if you are new to this, you will be able to see something like this, the default script output. You will look something like this. Okay, function, my function, bracket, bracket, open bracket, close bracket. That's all. You wouldn't have anything. Okay, now it's time to just put in the code. So for this code to work, you can just copy paste the whole code from my video description down below. I will put this as a document file somewhere down there, so you can just copy paste it directly. But it's also very important to understand what that means, so that when things doesn't work for you, you'll be able to understand what to change. Okay. So the first one is what is the template ID? So the template ID is the report template that I use. So what is the ID means is that you just look at here from the back. So you can see that there's document /d/ and all the string over there. So you just copy the whole thing, paste it in there. It has to be from your ID. Okay, it doesn't, this is my document ID. So if you use this, it might not work properly with whatever that you intend to do. Okay, the second one is actually select the data from the spreadsheet. So similarly, you actually have to get the document ID over here. Okay, so you just paste it down here, and you need to specify the range. So in this case, the range is on example sheet A1 to V5. Okay, I'm not doing all the range of all the countries because it will take a long time to run, and if you do anything wrong, it will take forever. So usually we'll limit down to, let's say, 2 or 3 rows during the testing, and when we are confident, we increase this to 210, so we can print out all the country at once. Okay, so let's go for example A3, which is here, to V5. Okay, which is what specify the range, and we're gonna do the report based on 3 countries here and 3 countries alone. Okay, so then we have to get the date from the spreadsheet. So in this case, the case date is this one. So it's the date where the case happened. So in this case, 17 September to 30 September, which is why I've specified the range to A2 to, actually it can be V2, AO2 is a bit of an overkill, and we actually get the value 0. So in this case, I'm not really specifying only the date because I want this range to be very similar to this range. You will see why later, where this is A to V and this is A to V. So the 5th column in the first data is the same as the 5th column in the second data, because you will see why later. Okay, so I only need 1 row, and I also need to specify that this is a list, not an array, because when you do a spreadsheet value get, you actually input as an array. And if you put a dot value 0, you actually convert that into a list, and it's a lot easier for the calculation down below later as well. Okay, so the next part is actually get time and date information. Not exactly necessary for every use cases, but when I want to generate my report, I usually like to have a timestamp on the folder so that I know this report is generated at what time and which minute exactly. Because if I'm trying to regenerate report over and over again over a short period of time, I need to know which report come from which batch of generation, so that it's very clear that this is the latest one, and I fix the code, this is what I get, and this is, how do I differentiate from one to another. Okay, so the overall concept is very simple. I'm creating a variable called D, where we'll get new date. So in this case, it's just a built-in Google Appscript formula, where we'll push the date information to a variable called D, and we split D up to date, month, year, hour, and minutes by using the get date, get month, get full year, get hour, get minutes command. And then I try to combine them again into a new variable called the date. Okay, why do I need to separate and combine them? Is because I will have the flexibility to combine things the way I want it. So if I say I don't want to use slash, I want to use some funny symbol, I can do that. But if you don't specify this, if you pipe the date directly, you pipe D directly in the next step, you might not have as much control as you want with the output, basically. Okay, so the next part is specifying the folder on where to create the document and where to create the PDF. Okay, the first one is, of course, dry app get folder by ID. So this is the folder ID, which is you go here, you'll be able to see that there's an ID up here. So this is the ID that I want the file to be generated in, and And you can see this in another folder called Liquid Brain and so on. This is the project under Liquid Brain. Okay, so after we create an ID, we'll also need to create 2 folders, which is specifically created every single time you run the script. So the first one is the Google document folder, where you host the Google Doc. The second one is a PDF folder. So why would I want to arrange it this way? Is because if I want to edit anything, I can keep the Google document folder to myself. And let's say if I have an admin, you have a clerk, if I have some other people working with me, but you don't want them to edit the file. They only have the file for them to understand the communications, or you just want them to see the file without editing. You can just give them the share link to the PDF. So just to prevent mistake of them going edit some file and so on. Okay, so that settled our. So this will actually create 2 of the folder based on the date that we created. Okay, so you create 2 folders, something like that, where first folder is DOC with the current date, second is the PDF with the current date. So once you run the script, it is what they will do. They will take in all the data, they will get the current date and time, which is the exact time they click the run button, and they will create 2 folders, 1 doc, 1 PDF. So if you run until only line 25, this is what you get. So let's continue. So the next one is a for loop. Okay, you can see the for loop actually goes all the way to the end of the script, because this is the time where you generate the report, and then you do the text replacement and insert the table and the figures into the report. Okay, let's go for the first one, variable country and variable continent. So this is fairly straightforward. Actually, let's go for the for loop first. Okay, so variable I equals to 0, I is lower than COVID length, I plus plus. I think if you're familiar with for loop, you should be able to understand this. So we start I with 0, which means that row, the first row. Okay, so if COVID length is smaller, I is smaller than the total number of row, with plus 1. Okay, so it will increase until we run out of rows, and then the whole for loop will stop. Okay, so let's just assume now I equals to 0. Okay, so remember in Java or in Appscript, array starts from 0. When you have an array bracket 0, it literally means the first row or the first element. It doesn't. So yeah, coming from R, this is actually a bit more confusing for people. Okay, so the first one we want to do is variable country equals COVID data dot value I1. What does that mean is that if you look at here, so what we fit into the array is actually row 3. No, actually it's this where we start our row. Okay, so here A3 to V5. Okay, we're feeding in A3 to V5. So this is the whole array that we're feeding into Appscript. So what is the first thing that they do is here. Okay, value I1. So in this case, we are running I1. The first one is the row, the second one is the column. Okay, I is 0, so we are running the first row. 1 is 0, 1. So the country is Afghanistan. That will get fit into our country variable, which is what it means. So similarly, continent is the first row, third element. Okay, so you can see first row, third element is the continent. So once we've done that, we want to duplicate the template file first before we start working on it. Otherwise, you work on a template, like next time you come back in, everything is messed up. Okay, once we've done the country and continent, we'll need to duplicate the template file, which is the original Google document. Yeah, you know, chronologically it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's fine. Don't worry about it. Okay, where we get drive at, get file ID, and make copy. So this will make a copy of this report template and rename the file. Okay, so this will actually get the copy and rename it based on the country and continent that you declared earlier, which is why we need to find out what is the country and continent we're currently working on before we duplicate the file. Okay, so the new file will become COVID report -continent -country. Very similar. So you can actually see one example over here is that COVID report Europe, Albania, or COVID report Asia, Afghanistan, and so on and so forth. So they will get renamed into the specific country and continent that you are working on. Okay, so the next one is body. So what is meaning by document body? So if you are interested, I will link a link down below to explain how does a Google Doc work. So a Google Doc has like header, footer, and many other elements, but everything that you do in the middle is called the document body, which is what we want to focus on today. So we want to get the body out. Okay, so how we do like that is that we use the document app, open by ID, and you get the body. So the ID is predetermined with, is pre-calculated when we make the copy. We actually pipe the new document ID to the variable called document ID. Okay, so that actually get piped to this one, where now we have a new variable called body, which is the body of the newly duplicated template file. Okay, just whatever in the middle. So once we have that body, which is the middle of the content, we can just do a simple replace text. Okay, so we're replacing the country name with I1, which is the country name we've done just now. We do the date of generation with the date, so whatever we have done up here. So this will replace the date of generation, and similarly with continent, cumulative population percentage, and case sum. So this is just a very simple text replacement where they take whatever here and they see where is the population data, and they see this population data and put the value in. That's it, nothing really fancy about it. Okay, so once we've done that, we can start to work on something a little bit more difficult. So once you've done this, you will get something like, let's just open the example that I generated earlier. Okay, so you can see the country name has become Afghanistan. The date of generation, actually let's put it a little bit smaller so we can see the date of generation will become the current date of generation. And you will realize that I record my video way earlier than I post. Okay, so these are the tags where you can see that the total case number here, total case number has been replaced, the country name has been replaced, the continent has been replaced, the cumulative population percentage has all been replaced. So this is what Appscript has done and until the current moment. Okay, so let's continue on. So the next one is table. So this is not the correct way to do it, but it's a lot easier to illustrate an idea. Okay, so first one is that we need to get the row number of the COVID value, which is I just pipe in as I, so we only want that single row. Moment. Okay. And then we create what we call an array. So in this case, an array is just a series of number built onto a table. Okay, so in this case, they're called usually as a variable called cells. So what the cells have is basically just multiple square bracket. You can imagine every square bracket as an individual cells here. So every square bracket represents one cell, like A1, like B1, and so on. So in this case, you can kind of imagine this as this is A1, this is B1, and this is the second row, which is the A2, B2, A3, B3, and so on and so forth. So if you do your square bracket correctly, which is every row has their bracket and every cell has its own bracket, you should be able to get something like that. And every time you want to do a vertical join, you just put a comma in the middle and put a comma here to tell them it's a different dimension. Okay, I'll link a description down below to properly explain how does the value table works. I think that will be easier because this is actually quite intuitive if you actually started with programming, but completely confusing if you come from Excel sheets. Okay, so I suffer both cases, which is why. Okay, so once we're done, this will just be a simple table of 2 columns and 15 rows. Okay, so 8 to 12 is 8 to 21 is 14, and we have 15, which is the header. Okay, then we just append cell. End of story. That's it. Very easy. So if you look at our thing over here, so you just append this table directly into the report, which is, if you don't know what appends mean, you add it in the back. Done. So this is at the table in the second page, and now we can actually go into our third one, which is what I expect, a chart. Okay, so basically we want a line chart, and we want to have the date, and we have a number of cases, which in this case is opposite. I'll change that later directly. Okay, so the next one is actually set up the chart data. So if you want to, how do you set up chart data? The first thing is to actually isolate the numbers in. So this is not the correct way to do it. You actually should run a for loop to append all the data, but I'm just going to do it because it's easier to see. So how do you set up a data is to use something called charts.newDataTable. So this will set up a new data table to be piped into the calculation later. So what you need to do is first define all the column. Something like when you set up a SQL database, you need to specify what is the column, what is the column type. So that's the data type of the data inside the column, as well as the name of the column. So in this case, the first column will be called date, and it's a string. The second column will be number of cases, which is a number. Then we can just do the similar thing that we did for the cells just now and just add rows. So every column will be separated by a comma, and every row will be added by using an add row command. So this will actually generate a data very similar to what we done with the cell just now. Okay, so once we're done data type, we're gonna use another command called charts.newLineChart. So in this case, we're gonna build the chart and pipe it into a variable called chart. Make sense? Okay, so we're gonna chart.newLineChart, set data table to be the data table that we created over here. Plot data, the dimension will be the dimension of the picture, the number of pixels in the picture that you want to do later. So x-axis title should be the date, and the y-axis title should be number of cases. Okay, so that's how you set the title and the title of the overall chart, and you press build. So once you have a build command in there, you start to build the chart and save it as a variable. And once you have saved the object here, you just pipe the object using an append image command. So that will append the whole chart as an image into your report like that. Okay, so it depends on how your paper size is. You actually need to change a little bit of the report format and so on and so forth. So hopefully it's still recording. It is. Nice. Okay, so once we're done that, is how we're going to generate our PDF. So generation of PDF is slightly more nuanced because it's not a direct extract PDF and call it a day. So what you need to do is that, again, get document ID, pipe it into a new variable called a new document, because just now when we do the document ID, it's actually get the ID. Yeah, it's a bit more confusing. So I usually pipe it into a new variable, and then we run a save and close. So what does that do is that tell the computer that, yep, I have done with the body editing. I want to close the document now. Because if you don't, they'll leave it open, and when you generate PDF, it won't get updated. So you have to include a save and close here, so that next time, the next command that goes to that doc will be the new one. So they'll update it before they send to the next place. So save and close will close up the file, and then they pipe it to another variable called doc block. Okay, so a doc block will save this new document as a PDF, and of course you can change the name or you cannot change the name, doesn't matter. And then we use the PDF folder .directly create file, which is create a PDF based on this object, which is called doc block, and then finally we run a log, which is not really part of the generation process. So this will finally create the PDF file that you want. Okay, so let's just do a recap where we'll just start the generation. Okay, so we don't have enough computing time to run through all 210, and nobody want to sit there and watch half an hour of generation. So we're going to choose something slightly higher. So maybe here. So we're going to do United Kingdom to United States of Virgin Island. So you can see it's 201 to 204. So we go here, we just choose our 201 to 204. So this will be the range that we want to generate. And once we save the file, just to make sure that there's no errors here and there, we can just press run. So this will run through the whole report using this range and everything that else we just saved. So you get the data in, and you get the case date into another variable. You rename and create a folder based on the date and time that we have. I believe you can see it here, which is the newest date and time that we are running now. And then it runs into a for loop. We'll actually generate individual reports. So in this case, let's go in here. So this is the doc, it's the PDF. Okay, so you can actually see that it has generated 3 PDF report over here. So what's that the program do is that first thing, you go into a report template, create a duplicate, do all the text replacement, and get the the table as well as the line graph in there. So you can see that. Let's go to this is one of the old one. Let's go to the new one. Okay, so we have United Kingdom, there's America, and United Republic of Tanzania. Okay, let's go to our US since they are #1 country in the world. So you can see that your case praise record. So these are the original template, which nothing has changed. And you can see that there's a space here because because some of the data has a break and some of the replacement doesn't do very well, which is why it has one of the spacing here that we might want to troubleshoot later. But it has successfully changed the name of the country, date of generation, as well as all the case. So yeah, US has 500,000 cases the last 14 days. That's a lot. Okay, so you also have all the variables nicely filled into the report. And you have a table here. Similarly, we have some problem with the page break and the generations and so on. And we have very nicely a table and a graph. That's it. Okay, so let's try the other one. Let's try United Kingdom. So in this case, we do not suffer from the break situation just now. Maybe because the word size is smaller, something a little bit more to troubleshoot with. So we also United Kingdom, data generation, all the statistic of the country, as well as the data table, and we have the number of cases for the last 14 days with the correct x-axis and y-axis label over here. So that's basically how you're going to generate all the report, and all the folder here will be tagged by the time, which is in this case about 6 in the afternoon, and you're able to see the report directly. So because we only pipe in 201 to 204 just now. Okay, we have an error here, which is always happen when you never try your code in front of the camera, because everything you try offline will be fine, but every time you try online, something wrong is going to happen. And most likely I have run out of computer time and they couldn't locate things like that. I'm not too sure what happened, but usually if you run it, you should be fine. Just to test out the hypothesis, let's just go for it. No, I'm not dragging for time because YouTube count my watch time instead of actually, the views and count and so on. And most likely people won't watch until this far and just click away. So yeah, let's see. So usually that will happen when some of the file is still under access and there's a conflict of two things opening the same file at the same time and both connect at what they want. Okay, so now we have generated another folder, which is another 3 minutes later. And if all goes well, we should have 4 report of each country over here. So as you can see, it will actually generate the report in real time and show you that. And if there's an error, it will show an error. If there's an error, which is something I don't like, that if there's no error, they didn't say successful, they just end. So in this case, we only have 3 and we still doesn't have the 4th one. Yep, we have the 4th one now. Yep, we have the 4th one, Tanzania is here. So yeah, I think it's a string size issue where it's too long. They actually create another spacing in front and the back of it. Okay, the good news is Tanzania has no COVID-19 case. While UK and US, a little bit higher than usual. How about Virgin Islands over here? Yep, very low as well. Okay, so that's basically the whole Appscript workshop. So you can find all the resources and all the documents as well as the template that I use in the video description down below. So if you have any problem, just feel free to email me on the email I linked down below. I believe it is liquidbrain.r@gmail.com. So just let me know if you have any problem running this or if anything else I can help. And when you're free, of course, check out the other video and try to give a thumbs up or subscribe. I don't know what's coming soon. I'm working on the next project. For now, thanks for watching the Appscript video. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.